No one expected the world to change that day. It was just past dawn in Moscow when President Vladimir Putin stood before the cameras, his face weathered by years of hard decisions and cold diplomacy. But today, something was different. There was no script in front of him, no aides nearby. The world watched with bated breath as he cleared his throat and said, in a voice quieter than usual, "There comes a time when strength is not in power, but in humility. And I have something to show you." At that exact moment, thousands of miles away in the dusty streets of Bamako, Mali, a man stepped onto a wooden stage built by local hands. Colonel Assimi Traoré, leader of Mali's transitional government, known for his military stoicism and defiant speeches against Western dominance, now appeared somber. He looked into the eyes of his people, some of them still reeling from years of conflict, hunger, and betrayal. "Today," he said, "we do not fight. Today, we walk toward something no one ever believed possible." And so began the most unexpected alliance in modern history. For decades, Russia had cast a long shadow over the world stage, often cold and calculated, moving pieces on the global chessboard with intention and steel. Meanwhile, Mali had stood in the margins, a land rich with culture but ravaged by external manipulation and internal strife. The two could not have been more different: one, a nuclear titan; the other, a former colony still nursing its scars. But the truth behind their union wasn't about politics, it was about pain. 2 years before the announcement, Traoré had secretly written a letter not to the Kremlin, but to Putin himself. The letter wasn't official, nor did it speak of trade deals or military cooperation. It was a personal appeal, scrawled in French and translated into Russian by a schoolteacher in Segu. It read, "You do not know me, but I know what it is to hold the burden of a nation while watching children starve, mothers cry, and the youth lose hope. If you have ever felt alone at the top of a mountain of bones, perhaps you'll read this not as a politician, but as a man." Against all odds, the letter reached Putin's private desk, and he read it. That letter triggered something in him. For all his years in power, surrounded by diplomats, security personnel, and layers of control, it had been a long time since someone had spoken to him without fear or formality. Putin kept the letter. He read it twice. Then again, something inside him long stirred. He responded, not through official channels, but with a handwritten note. "You are right. I have known loneliness. I have known pride. And I have made mistakes I can never undo. But if we are both standing on a mountain of bones, maybe we can climb down together." They began to speak in secret, first through letters, then secure calls, eventually face-to-face in a secluded Russian dacha by the Volga River. They spoke of suffering, of the weight of leadership, of wanting to leave something behind that wasn't just fear or ruin. They didn't agree on everything, far from it, but there was something unspoken that connected them: wariness. For both leaders, the world had always expected them to be warriors. Now, for the first time, they wondered if they could be healers instead. The announcement shocked the globe. The West cried propaganda. African neighbors watched with skepticism. Russian allies were puzzled. But the two men didn't care. They had a plan. It wasn't about arms or power, but agriculture. The United Agriculture Initiative, a grassroots project jointly funded by Russian soil scientists and Malian farming cooperatives, aimed to turn Mali into a breadbasket of West Africa using sustainable, localized technology. No weapons, no soldiers, just seeds, knowledge, and sweat. There were protests. There was sabotage. Several Russian advisors were attacked by extremist groups in the Sahel. Traoré's popularity dipped as rumors swirled that he was selling the country to foreign interests. Putin faced ridicule at home from hardliners who called him weak and naive. But they pressed on. In a small village outside of Kayes, a team of Russian and Malian engineers built the first solar-powered irrigation system. Children who had grown up seeing only dust now ran barefoot through green fields of millet and sorghum. A Russian agronomist named Sergei fell in love with a Malian schoolteacher named Aminata. They started a local program teaching kids both Russian and Bambara. Then came the flood. The rainy season hit harder than expected. The irrigation systems collapsed under pressure. Villages were inundated. Crops were lost. People despaired. Traoré flew to the scene, standing knee-deep in muddy water with villagers yelling in frustration. Putin, against the advice of every security advisor, boarded a plane and flew to Mali within 48 hours. He wore no suit, no medals, just a white shirt, stained with sweat by the time he arrived. And when he stepped into that broken village, he didn't speak as a leader. He rolled up his sleeves and helped lift debris with his bare hands. That image to men, once symbols of military strength, covered in mud as they worked side by side with villagers, became a viral sensation across the world, not because it was staged, but because it was real. A year later, the program expanded. Ghana, Burkina Faso, and even skeptical nations like Chad sent envoys to learn more. Mali's food dependency dropped by 22%. Russia, in turn, saw a rise in its cultural exports, not as propaganda, but as part of a newfound diplomacy, art, books, and agricultural knowledge. More importantly, a boy named Muhammadu, whose family once lived off unfood aid, now harvested tomatoes and peppers with his grandfather. When asked on Malian state TV what he wanted to be when he grew up, he simply said, "I want to help others grow things too." The story of Putin and Traoré's alliance is not without flaws, criticism, or complexity. But for once, it wasn't about dominance. It was about redemption. It was about what happens when two unlikely men put down their fists and instead extend a hand, not to grasp power, but to pull each other out of the rubble. In the end, the message was simple. The world doesn't change because of grand speeches or mighty armies. It changes when the unexpected happens and people choose to build instead of break. No one expected this, but maybe that's why it mattered.